Hi, it's Peter here. I have 5 tips about Olympus cameras for you. Tip number 1. Store My Sets to mode dial. My Sets is a handy way of storing your most used settings for different shooting scenarios, so that when you set My Set to 1, it's your default settings for everything in a camera, and you might have My Sets 2 for something else and so forth. But accessing them from the menu is not the easiest way. But in older EM10 cameras, you can store them to mode dial. And you can choose any of the places in mode dial. Let's say that you don't use the scene mode or P mode at all. You can set it to something else like My Set 1, My Set 2, etc. And I think this is the very, very handy way of using so-called custom modes, like they are called now. They used to be My Sets and now they are custom modes. Since the camera doesn't have the custom modes in the mode dial, but as you saw, you can set them. This is a very handy way and very fast way of accessing your default settings for different shooting scenarios. Tip number 2, disabling some of the function buttons. Sometimes I press or used to press these buttons by accident, and then when I start shooting I had, HDR on or some other features on by accident. But you can disable these 2 buttons and you can do it from here. I think it's a very good way of disabling these buttons if you don't use them. Of course, if you use them, then don't do this. But since I access these features from the Super Control Panel or the menu, I don't use these, so I have disabled them just so that there won't be any accidental features turned on the camera. You might ruin your shot or even miss a shot if you have some odd feature for that particular moment on. And tip number 3, image stabilizing priority. You have 2 options, FPS priority or IS priority. The difference is that if you have it on IS priority, it will prioritize the image stabilizer over shooting speed. So the shooting speed might be a bit less when you're having this on like this. And then you can prioritize also the shooting speed. So the stabilizer won't be as necessarily as effective when it prioritizes the shooting speed. I have it on IS priority because I very seldom need to use really fast high sequential or something like that. So that's why I usually have it on IS priority. But of course, if you shoot a lot of flying birds and fast moving subject, you might want to have this on FPS. It all depends on how you use your camera, or what. It's not how to use your camera, it's more about what are you shooting. The EM10 Mark II has also this feature, but it's a bit different. The options are marked on and off. If it's off, it will prioritize FPS, and if it's on, it will prioritize the image stabilizing. And then something totally different. Tip number 4. Use Lightroom's masks to control how the blurry area looks in your images. Lightroom introduced masks in their latest update, and I think this is the biggest update ever since it was launched. I think the masks are great help for image editing. How to affect the blurry area. Choose the mask tool, select subject, and then invert the subject so that everything you do will only affect the background. And then if your background is a bit busy, like in this image, you can use texture slider to make it more pleasing. It won't add more depth of field, but it will make it a bit more blurry in a way. So if it is a bit busy, because some lenses have a bit busy bokeh or background blur, and with the texture slider, you can make it more pleasing. Try also the clarity slider. Reduce the clarity and see how it affects. Play around with the sliders to make the background a bit more pleasing. I think this is a very good tool, and I bet this works also in some other image editing software where you can select the subject and the background or separate them. And of course, you don't need AI like Lightroom is using. You can also manually paint the background or choose the background. But of course, AI is a lot faster. And what I found out that the Lightroom masks works really well. Give it a try. This was something different. Usually I only have camera tips, but now I added a image editing tip. And please let me know in the comments down below if this is something that you like. And if you do so, I might do some more of these image editing tips, because image editing is a big part of photography now. And guess what? I will have an extra tip after the next tip, which is tip number 5, LV close-up setting. If you have the enlarged view when you're doing close-ups, and I have set it so that it can be turned on from here. What it does, it will enlarge the image when you're taking close-ups, and so that you will see the subject a bit better. When you're using AF, then having the LV close-up setting to mode 2, the enlarged view will stay and you will see exactly where the camera is focusing. And if you have on mode 1, it will show the whole picture area when you're focusing. And this is when you're using AF. And if you have a subject that is still, then I would have it on mode 2 so that you see exactly where it's focusing. And you know that you will nail the focus. But if the subject is moving, then I would set this to mode 1 so that you can better see where the subject actually is. I think this is a very handy way of making sure that your close-ups are sharp, tacked sharp. And then extra tip, handheld starlight for noise reduction. This is from Matt Waller. It was in the comments of this video about noise reduction. I never thought of this before. Handheld starlight stacks images. It takes a burst of images and stacks them. And when you're stacking images, it will reduce noise. And handheld starlight reduces noise quite a bit. The downside on this is that it is a JPEG and it turns on auto ISO, etc. So you're not in full control of the image parameters or the options that you use. But what it does, it reduces noise. You can find it from SCN. And this is in EM10 Mark II, Mark III, and Mark IV at least. Not sure about the EM5 cameras. And it's a bit different. It depends on if it's a EM10 Mark II or EM10 Mark III or 4. It looks a bit different, but the feature is exactly the same. So if you are afraid of having too much noise in your images in a darker situation, try the handheld starlight feature. It works quite well on that because, as I said, it stacks the images. But of course, when it takes bursts of images from the same scene, you need to have a very steady hand when you're making those images, so the camera has an easier task to align all the images, because of course the hand is moving all the time when you're making images. So try to be as steady as possible to get the best result. Thanks so much, Matt Waller, for this tip. It is a gem, a hidden gem from Olympus cameras. Unfortunately, it's not in the newest EM1 cameras at all, but it has different ways. And if any of you have any good tips, please share them in the comments down below. I might include them in my future tips videos. And yeah, you probably saw what I'm doing here. I'm running out of tips, so please help me and tell me a few of your tips. It doesn't matter if I've covered them before, but you know, it's always a good thing to read the comments and please comment on these tips, and especially about the image editing. And here are some more videos for you to watch. There's some more tips for you. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.